Uh-huh. Welcome once again to Transfigure Nation. My name is Alexis Lorraine, and I will be your host this evening. I don't know what's going on with Instagram tonight, but every time I try to bring Ash on, we get disconnected. So, we're gonna make this work. It's gonna happen. I swear to goodness, this is gonna happen. Okay, so this is the day I've had, folks. I woke up with a sore throat so bad I could barely talk. After many doses of... Oh, excellent. Okay, so after many doses of cold medicine today, I'm functioning. Not great. I'm functioning. I'm not sure what's going on, but every time I've added Ash so far, it's kicked us out. So let's see, now that she's requested, let's bring her in. Yes! Okay.
Hi.
So excited. It's gonna be like, no more technical difficulties. I cannot stand it. It's been bad enough. Welcome. I saw a post earlier that you did in your story today. I do my research, so, I want to talk to you about that. But first, I would love for you to introduce yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. My name's Ash. I'm a designer, speaker, and a big part of my reason why I am speaking is because I'm trans. Not because transgender as a topic needs to be talked about, but because my transition transformed my perception of my reality and led me to realize that there are things that people do not see that need to be talked about and that people need to understand to change the framework through which we live in, because we don't question the assumptions and we just build on top of those. So I think being transgender is a really powerful experience in starting to question assumptions that have been given to us and laid out in such a fashion where you just live it and be like, yeah, sure, this is my gender and that's it. But when you start to look deeper into the self and understand your own truth, and you go, wait a second, this is not at all in resonance with what I'm being told, you learn a lot of stuff. And I think that fundamental concept, if you abstract it from being transgender, is a really, really important way of thinking about the world that we live in and how we experience it. I can just keep going, but
that's an excellent way to put it. Way to jump right in there. We're a little... we'll keep you going. No worries. We're gonna talk about this. We're a little glitchy, so we'll bear with me if I miss a question or anything. We're gonna make this work. So
is my connection weak?
Pardon?
Is my connection weak? Do I have a bad connection?
Yeah, we're a little, I don't know, everyone in the chat group, is it me or is it Ash? You tell us, because you'll know better than I will. Kinda. That's not very helpful, Rebecca.
Here, wait, I can step closer to the router. That might fix things.
Okay.
Not Ash is fuzzy. Okay, 1 second. How's this? Is this better at all?
Okay.
Is this better?
We'll make it work. It's a little better, yes. All right, so tell us, before we get into the big conversations about changing our society and using our unique perspective to better understand what needs to change and how. Let's first see how we got there for you. At what point did you realize that the gender norm wasn't working for you?
I think the gender norm wasn't working for me when it was never working for me. I just didn't realize it. That realization only came a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I still?
And was there A little bit. We're still a little fuzzy on the connection, but we're gonna make it work.
Here,
We're gonna keep going.
Let me just kick off my Wi-Fi real quick.
Okay.
Yes.
She's done.
How's this? Is this any better?
That is much better. Yes, much better.
Okay, cool. All right,
Significantly improved. Okay, so
no Wi-Fi.
so just recently. Okay, so just recently, what happened recently that triggered this, that caused your understanding to clarify, as it were?
Yeah, I guess it was a series of experiences. The first thing is like my partner at the time was like, "Hey, I want to be non-monogamous, and that's something that I need to explore." And she's saying, "I think I might be more into women," and I thought that's so funny in retrospect, but she wanted to go explore that, and so I said, okay, either I stick around and I try this out, or I leave. And if I stick around, what's the benefit of sticking around? And I think like the benefit is trying something new, trying something different. And the thing that had been lingering in my mind was, I never really experimented enough with my gender, and I feel like there's something there, so it's worth kind of checking out and seeing. So then for the next like 6 months, I started like dressing and like going out dancing, and not really sure exactly what my gender was. I just knew it wasn't cis. And
okay.
Yeah, it was probably about 3 or 4 months in, when I was in a club and I'd just been dancing. I went into the women's bathroom with my friend, and looked in the mirror, and I just adjusted my hair. And in that second that I looked in the mirror, the person that I was used to was not there. Suddenly, like, I saw a stranger, a person I'd never seen before, and she was beautiful. And I couldn't get her out of my mind. I could just see her, and I couldn't change my own perception of what I saw. So that's when I realized, oh my God, this is no longer experimentation. This is no longer like trying things out. This is like way more serious. I've just opened up something that is going to change my life. And now there's all of these other things I need to do to kind of like find out more about whether or not this is what I need to do. And so then,
okay. And how long ago was that?
That was about, I'm going to put you back where I found you now that we're fine. That was about, that was like 2016.
Okay. Okay, so the journey basically got this kickoff in 2016.
Yeah.
And what did you do from there? Where did you go from there?
So I sat on it. It was like I opened up a box, was like, what's inside? And then when I looked inside and found out what was in there, I was like, oh my God. And I closed it.
And sat on it.
And I literally...
You've been closed!
I didn't know what to do. Hi, Texas, USA. Yeah, I didn't know what to do. So I just was like, maybe I should just like wait for realizations or change to happen and more clarity. I just knew I wasn't cis.
Right.
So after that, at some point I broke up with my partner, and that must have been like a year and a half ago, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And when that happened, I was suddenly like freed of this like, hi, Jerica.
Hi, Jerica.
I was freed of this this kind of like constructed relationship in like a hetero way between a man and a woman. Like that part was actually still preventing me in a way where like I knew that if I transitioned, she would leave, and I didn't want that to happen because I loved her. But in retrospect, I'm so glad it's over because, you know, all of the changes that happened. So I Here's what happened. So I broke my arm in 3 places on a bike ride, and in breaking my arm in 3 places, it made me kind of like reassess my situation where I was living in Berkeley, and I decided that I needed to move to San Francisco. I started a new job, and eventually I started dating other people. And when I started all of these things after I recovered from my arm break, I decided that I wanted to try hormones, and it hurt. I just decided that I wanted to try hormones and went forward with it without knowing really how I identified, except I wanted to stop the testosterone. Testosterone just has to end.
Okay, so at this point, you're looking more at an unclear gender definition, but more, it seems like your interest was in stopping testosterone so you could find that happy medium until you figured out which side of the fence you wanted to be on, or whether you wanted to be on both.
Exactly. And so I didn't really know.
Okay.
The big change for me was 2 things. The first thing is the partner that I chose was very supportive of the transition. And so she was normalizing the idea that I could be trans, that I could change. Emily is rad. Joined.
No idea, Emily. It may be working, it may not be. We're going to keep going, though, so...
Is it? Is it not working for Emily?
No, there's been a problem with the save function and the sharing function of these videos. So right now, I'm hoping it works. If it doesn't, this will be a live recording and it'll be a one-time performance, but I'm hoping it'll work. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I tried earlier and it seemed to be okay, but we'll see.
Okay. So the big thing for me was when I went to Lightning in a Bottle, which is this music festival with some friends, and my intent, it says Instagram is having issues. My intention was to explore more of my gender in this space of like freedom, and everyone's dressing up and dancing and having a good time. And I kind of like had this moment on Saturday where I was kind of like dressing in the way that I wanted to be, and feeling like there's this flickering switch going on where I would dance with a friend, and suddenly my femininity would emerge like a flame. And in that moment, it felt really good. And then it would just, my own kind of like self-control being like, whoa, this is strange. It would turn it off.
Right. It's like the driver's pulling in on the reins, saying, whoa,
yeah,
no,
this is not okay. This is strange. This is different. So like the on-off switch.
Yeah.
The next night, I went out dancing again, and I had made a friend earlier in the day who had this giant rainbow flag. And this rainbow flag was so beautiful that when I saw him at the stage, I asked if I could play with the rainbow flag. So I took the flag and I waved it all around, and it was just so beautiful with the silk and the shimmering and the colors. I was like completely dressed up in my dancing gear, and obviously not passing and very much trans. And I noticed that everyone was looking at me, not in like a staring way, but just like noticing that I existed and noticing that I was waving this giant flag. And it kind of created this big sense of safety around me that everyone was like vibing on and feeling really good in. And the important part of this is that it was sort of like a key for me, that it was while I was unlocking safety for others, I was also unlocking safety for myself. That the inner warden, the thing that kind of self-regulates, could quiet down, and that I could feel safe in that space. So then, after running around with this rainbow flag for quite some time, I ended up in a space with my friend, and I asked him if I could spend some time with him hanging out on the dance floor. He and his crew are like have this thing called Zendo, which is where they help people who are like who are like having a really bad trip, and they help them kind of like come back together. So it's like really good vibes, really good chill energy. And I I don't know if I should say this on camera, but I took some Molly, and when I did, after like when it hit, my heart just like opened, and in that opening, I suddenly felt everything calm down, and this kind of like crack about here, this high above my head, just like shattered, and all this water just poured straight into my body, and it felt like literally someone had just like taken a glass, like a giant container of water, and poured it into me. Hi, Jules. Nice to see you.
Okay. So it sounds like you had the internal societal censor, as I like to think of it. It's that internal voice that's instilled in us by the expectations of society, that keeps us from exploring ourselves and keeps us from doing that which would make us complete. And you had a little bit of assistance shutting that voice up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, they're doing studies about its effects in therapy and stuff, but yeah. I didn't have time to wait, so I did it. And this is probably the strangest part, which I don't think is something that everyone experiences when they realize their own identity, but the pouring of the liquid was my consciousness. And like it suddenly became this place where myself and my old self met each other. Like the self in the current world is there, but then this new self entered my body, and the two selves are like, wait a second, I'm me, who are you? They said that, you know, kind of like at the same time. And then additionally, I'm observing both of these selves meeting each other.
Okay. So there's three selves. There's the...
Yeah.
You have yourself, and then the existential, the outward observer watching them both. Okay. Now...
If I were to gender them, it's like her entered me, they were there, and then us all viewing everything at once. And so that was like a really big defining moment for me, because as soon as she entered my body, there were a couple messages that happened. The first thing was, okay, now that I'm here, I want to tell you that you have this path, and this is the path that you have. And I saw my path. I saw my life path just appear. And I've seen this happen before. I used to be a DJ, and I used to be walking the path of being a DJ. And I remember the moment where I decided I didn't want to walk that path. And I used to be running a design agency, and I remember the moment that I decided not to be going into running a design agency. So when this path emerged, I recognized the pattern. I recognized that this was me deciding if I wanted to go down this route. And I said, hell yes, I do. So then when I said that, I saw like this fracturing of light that illuminated this is the path. And then the next thing that happened was, now that I'm here, it's time to get in touch with your body. So we started dancing, and like there was a lot of hip opening movements, and like the femininity just like flowing through. And then the third thing was like, okay, now that I'm here, I have a lot of things that I need to talk about, and I need you to be able to share these things. And like, don't worry about like what they are. You will know what you need to speak of when the time arrives. But just know that the mystery, that all of this power that you can feel is all right here. You just don't need to know exactly what it is until it needs to be there. So those were all like very big kind of realizations. And when I was the kind of like the thing that stuck out to me was her personality was different. Like she was very direct and very like, okay, like we're just going to do this and then we're going to do that. And so on the way exiting the festival, there's like this long line of cars. And I remember like saying, okay, what would she do as I'm continuing to integrate? What would she do? And she's like, well, I would just go straight for the exit. We'd just skip all these cars. And I'm like, well, I definitely wouldn't do that at the time. And she would. And I said, well, I'm practicing listening to her. So I took the car and I just drove right past hundreds of cars and went straight for the exit. And so then I think the last 4 months after that, I was processing this like sense of all of us being in one container, and that she was a part of me, but not all of me. There were like aspects that hadn't been transformed. It wasn't ultimately until I went out to another festival, my partner asked me, like, so they were using she, her pronouns, how did that feel? And when she asked me that, I cried, because I realized, like, that felt right. And the second I admitted that, I had to admit that I was in a body that wasn't exactly the way that I would have wanted it to be as a woman. So
now you mentioned that you basically had this infusion of this other self. How do you reconcile your previous self is still there, is what you're saying, and how do you find that balance? How do you find that harmony between the two selves? You have your feminine self, you have the other self. How do you find that balance if they are both still present and still vocal?
This sounds like my gender bending spirits back in 2013. Yeah. Gender bending. Well, so like the thing is you've all, like, I've been living for the past 2 years under they, them.
Right.
So I've already integrated this kind of different persona into my personality. And so everything's built off of that. So it's sort of like you sprinkle her in every now and then when she jumps in. And so there was like this decoupling process where I had to undo my behaviors and undo like my approach to things to allow space for her to come in. And a large part of that was actually practicing emptiness, was practicing like when I wake up, the first thing I would do is I would say, okay, like, I am nothing, I am the void, and that's all I am, and allow the thing that wants to emerge within me to emerge. And then I've made plenty of space for her to come through, and then she's like right there, and I'm like, okay, I can feel that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to it where you said you needed, you had realized that the body wasn't what you would have wished. What was your next step? I mean, how did you go about making the changes necessary for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I haven't actually made any physical changes aside from the fact that I've been on hormones for a year and a half.
Me neither.
Yeah, one thing that I've been doing has been I maximized the amount of weight that I could lose before really hitting the hormone levels for estrogen, and then hi Zakira, and then once I basically hit the lowest weight possible for my height, which I think is 130 pounds. And
okay.
Anything lower, it's scientifically not a healthy thing, whatever that is. But I then just was okay, let's add on the weight once I've hit my E levels, because I'll just get the fat distribution the way I want it to be. And that's been a lot more difficult, adding weight as someone who is actually naturally skinny. But adding 1,200 calorie shakes right before I go to bed really helped me increase the velocity of fat gains. And I've noticed that if you massage, I started massaging my breasts a few weeks ago, and that has made them kind of pop a lot more. I put on my dress I hadn't put on in a few weeks, and I was like, whoa, wait a second, there's something going on here.
Yeah, that happens. They do say massage can stimulate growth. It's not guaranteed, but it is a means of growth. Now that explains why mine are. No, I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, okay.
Well, it's
so
also genetics, right? So
it's also a little genetics. Fortunately, I'm lucky. The ladies in my family were, I wouldn't say blessed because many of them got breast reductions, but they were endowed. So, all right, so let's talk about a.
yeah, you should totally massage.
Rebecca. Oh, Rebecca.
I highly recommend it.
Okay, so let's talk about your story post today. I want to get to this before we get too much further into it. We have an audience. We're going to hopefully record this and post it again on YouTube. So explain to me what you mean by what you said today in your story post about love being kind of just accepted.
Oh yeah, Raw Jules, going for it. Should add you to the stream.
Julia, stop. We're having a discussion. Okay, so
okay.
What did you say?
This is the big epiphany, and I wouldn't say it's not even just for the day. I'd say it's for the month or for the year. I've been trying to make sense of like where I stand, like what is the direction that I'm taking it? Why is being transgender like a part of what I need to do and what I'm talking about? And why does this like the new age world is very much about like manifesting positivity through some rhetoric that I feel like is disconnected. And a part of that, one of those sayings that they have is like choose love. Like I always choose love. And like what that means, if you unpack that, is it's like, okay, if you're in a situation that's negative or you're feeling negative, such as like I'm mad at this person or this person's having problems or like I'm feeling anxiety, you have a choice. And the choice is either to move into that like negativity, that anxiety, that negative feeling, or you can choose love, which in whatever case it may be is generally a positive thing. And I agree with that. I agree with like this idea that I'm just grabbing a pen here. You have the negativity. You have like the negativity, which is the dark, and then you have the positivity, which is the light, right? And I agree that like if you're feeling negative, the way to move out of that is to create positivity through love. But, and this is the problem, is that by believing that love is the solution, you're also necessitating that the opposite exists. And like that's the problem that I see in like this idea of choosing love, is that you're not actually escaping the paradigm of the human experience. The human experience is like struggle. The human experience is like really hard, but that's because we're also attached to all the victories that are with it, which is like choosing love and choosing happiness and choosing laughter. And those are not bad things to choose. But I think when we live in a binary world where we think that it's just like everything's good or everything's bad, you get stuck in the system of this pulling. And so you can choose to experience good things and you can choose to experience bad things, but let's not be attached and be mindful of the fact that all of these exist within a paradigm, and that to leave that paradigm will allow us to transcend the paradigm. And this is what Buddhism talks about in terms of detachment, and it talks about not
lingering in the moment.
Not lingering into the moment. This was a big thing for me when I transitioned. It's like, as a woman, you now all of a sudden take on the burden of like all of these perceptions that are expected of a woman, right? Which is like that she looks good, that she like does her hair well, that she like puts on makeup, and that she has certain mannerisms. And so like the duality of that is like, as a man, I didn't really care about my looks. I didn't put on like my moisturizer. I didn't try to like make sure my hair was good every day. And now, like, as a woman, it's like, no, beauty is like a part of the thing that I do. And so
now the question, real quick before we move on, are your beauty rituals done for you, or are they done to meet societal expectations?
Yeah, I think it's both. I do enjoy looking good. Sometimes I say fuck it, but other times I'm like, am I not allowed to swear?
You're allowed one. That was it. Our PG-13 rating has been succeeded here, folks. So
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I keep it PG-13 because there are younger people who do watch this. So.
Well, I mean, like, my sister was like 12, and I think she'd heard many swears before that.
But the problem is I'm their teacher. So.
Oh my God. Okay, I hope you censor it. I got lost.
You're talking about how your beauty routines are partly for yourself, but they're also partly for, the societal expectations. So you have partly self, partly society.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I go on a date, I want to look my best. And looking my best is also adhering to some societal expectations. And I think I look good when I do it too. So they're not in conflict. But I think what is in conflict is the continuation of deriving value from the way that you look. And I think that's something that you have to be aware of when you step into I'm buying into the celebration of my femininity with beauty. But by buying into beauty, I'm also buying into the opposite of beauty, which is ugliness. And so I now contend with feeling ugly when I'm also trying to feel beautiful. But if I said, you know what, I don't want to adhere to any form of beauty, I don't want that to be a part of my paradigm, then it also means that ugly cannot exist within my paradigm because I haven't bought into it.
Right. So, you can't remove part of the duality. It's basically you either live in the duality or you remove it completely. You can't choose to separate half. And I get what you're saying about the choose love. Great. But my problem with that is that the specificity is lacking. Choose love. Great. What does that even mean specifically? It's like we can keep saying, yes, you're all in the good place. It's fine. Stop talking. I'm going to start kicking people off, you guys. All right, so you have this specificity that's necessary. But again, as you said, you can't remove the negative emotion. You can't remove the negative experience without removing the positive side as well. So you have to find your balance. And I think that's the more important part, is finding that balance within it. You're going to move through the darkness. You're going to move through the light, just to be in the moment of whatever that is. And I've studied Buddhism for the last 3 years, since I got excommunicated from the Catholic Church, actually. So, I'd like to interject there and say, like, I'm still like playing around with this understanding because it's a new insight of mine. I think that the obvious answer is you find a balance. Right.
I think though that if finding a balance still is working within the duality, and to leave the duality, we have to say something like, I acknowledge both at the same time and they exist, and that's it.
And that is the next stage of enlightenment for those who can ascend to it. I'm not there. I get stuck in the moment. So, as long as I get stuck in the moment, I can't even begin to conceptualize the idea of transcending, the reality of that situation. So.
Yeah, and I guess transcending is like this weird loaded term because you think like transcendence is like this angel.
All of a sudden, it's rising above it. It's living in the moment without the impact of the external affecting your internal well-being, whether it's good or bad. You find your peace is in you, and then all that comes and goes with the world is just noise. And that's basically what the Taoist or the Zen Buddhists teach, is that once you find your inner peace and you find your inner stability, everything else either fades away or becomes just a background symphony of noise to your inner peace, which is the transcendence. So
yeah, it's a little
okay.
topic.
It's a complicated one. There's a Buddhist temple here in South Carolina. It's an hour and a half away, and I drive there usually once every few weeks. The Zen master there is this very old man, but he's amazing. And there's absolutely nothing that ever rattles him. You know, me being transgender has never once even caused him to go, It was more just like, oh my God, okay. I don't know what the difference is, but there's a difference. Okay, so let's get back to you. Now, where would you like to find yourself getting to? I know this is way down the road and we're talking long-term effects and changes, but what do you envision that your path is taking you toward?
Is this in the context of being transgender, or is this in the context of my life?
We'll do both. And sometimes they're not separate. Sometimes they're going to cross over each other, but
going, including transgender in that story.
That works too.
Okay. Yeah, so I think on a just very tangible level, the thing that I'm considering right now in terms of surgery is if I want breast augmentation. And I think I do if I can still keep some degree of sensitivity. But I'm also really just trying to hack my body to get me there. You basically need fat to grow your boobs. And so I'm just trying to add on fat in a way that is good for me.
Right.
I can just see if I can feed them. Hungry hippos. But that's in the realm of surgery. I think that's it. I've been thinking a lot about FFS, which is facial feminization surgery, and a lot of the stories that I'm told by trans people is the longer that they have transitioned, the more FFS became a certain yes. And for me, the longer that I have been transitioning, I am actually fairly happy with where I am. And the validation that I get online actually helps encourage me by taking photos of myself and being hey, you know what? I can actually be beautiful, and hey, I can actually look good here. And I'm reaching a point where I'm saying, and I've seen transgender figures do FFS, and they look great, but then they just look like a generic woman. And I think part of what excites me about trans visibility is that there is a unique facial feature construction for trans women that I think is beautiful. Thank you, Rebecca. And I think that struck me. When I saw ContraPoints get her FFS, I was she just looks normal now. Good. I mean, she's really pretty, but something has been lost there. And I think that excitement that I had for her just kind of changed. I'm not so interested in just watching a woman speak. I'm interested in seeing other people who are visibly trans, being a part of the world that we occupy.
Okay.
So that's not to say that I don't think someone like ContraPoints is beautiful, or that whatever she did, that's fine. My personal taste is, I think, having a uniqueness to you and having some of the traits of what you have taken with you in the past makes you more interesting, makes you more unique. And for someone that speaks a lot about perception, I think that's something I have to continue to work with, is my own self-perception of what I see. So that's kind of the very tangible aspect of my transgender, what surgeries are you going to do?
Right.
The other side is like, where's my life going? Well, my entire trajectory has changed because I have changed my gender and because I'm trans. Thank you, Jerica. And so basically becoming trans is like, okay, now you have this huge spiritual mission and go fulfill it. Right? And so now I'm just on that path. And that path right now means like writing about perception, creating my online social media profile. I'm starting to coach people and looking to the world in a way of like, how can I impact it? And how can I raise the bar for what everyone is not seeing? Being trans is like a very special experience. You see two sides of the world, or more than two sides, right? But you see sides of the world that most people just can't even conceive of. Gender is such a deeply held construct and such a deeply infused experience to everything, in everyone, that like you can't escape it. And so when you change genders and you start to change the experience of what side of a table, whether it's round or square, whatever, like you start to see the fundamental encoding of the social structure and how you're received and how you're experienced. And I think that perspective is really powerful in being able to question society and being able to question sort of like just big assumptions that people make and that you don't move on. Like, I'm not going to go down this route really largely because it's a whole political topic, but like, for example, just like talking about like, I think this recent news was like, oh, okay, like a transgender man can't be called a father, he's called a mother. I think that just like happened in the UK today. And like it's like, what is gender? What is sex? And like, I think intersex just blows up the entire picture of what is sex when they try to like talk about like biology. But like I feel like just generally being trans means you are a part of the people that ask fundamental questions about how we see the world. So that's sort of like on my life, on my life timeline, it's that ask fundamental questions about how you see the world. Really, really ask yourself, is what you're doing good for you? And like, are you seeing really what's there in front of you, or are you just picking up your phone and just being like, yeah, this is cool, like I get it, and then we're done there? There's so much nuance to your reality, and I think that the thing that I will move towards is transcending the story of being trans and like my trans experience to just talking about the human experience. And that's kind of like the big thing for me, that I'm just going to continue trucking along, talking about being trans and like relating it to the human experience. But ultimately, I just want to talk about the human experience, because that's where you really start to carve away at a larger societal thing.
And there are so many trans men and women and non-binary siblings on Instagram or Facebook or Reddit who have gotten to that point where they're ready to start talking about life from a bigger picture, outside of away from being under the trans umbrella, and it's we get there. We gestate, we grow, and then once we've exceeded our ability to talk about our transness or our trans experience, then it's time to start integrating some of that personal understanding into the duality or the multiplicity of the human experience into a broader spectrum. I was talking to somebody just today earlier on the phone, and she's like, I think I'm done. And I was like, you're never done. There's always more to say. But, it's the platform. It's the scope of it, I think, changes. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no. Like double tap. I like that. We are as a group marginalized, and our perspective is unique and different, and I think we can appreciate that perspective. And if we can be
refresh a little bit, we're going to catch up.
Oh, hello.
Froze again. Okay, you're back.
Okay, hi. Yeah, this marginalized experience is a really powerful teacher, and I think with that appreciation, we can bring more of a perspective to a table that is less diverse. And that's the whole story about diversity, right? Like, diversity and inclusion allows better, like, thinking.
And now here's the paradox of it, is by being on the outside gives you a better perspective of what's going on inside the inside society. By being cast out, you have this external view of it. So once we finally win this fight, because we will win this fight, folks, we are going to normalize being transgender. We are going to normalize being LGBTQ. It's a normal thing. It is a life experience, and we are going to win because, one, we are who we are, and we have combat this every step of the way, and we will not be defeated because our motivations are survival, whereas those who are looking to exterminate us are driven only by hate. So we are going to
add on to that. It's not about like opposition so much as it is about like creating like clarity and creating
oh no, I agree completely. You know, it's all about edification and illumination. We need to instead of opposition, it is more education. And once we can get people to realize that there's nothing wrong here. Stop trying to fix things that aren't broken. But once we're inside, once we do get there, we lose our external perspective, and then it's like, you know,
what value do we bring to the table at that point?
I know. We're just like everybody else, folks. What happened to my superpower?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something that I think about a lot is like, what is the transgender narrative transcendence? Like, once we move past like being trans is hard, you have to understand that there's more than just two genders, and that we need to think about like healthcare in a more broader spectrum, et cetera, like the transgender topics. It's like once you move past that, and I will have to say that sometimes people latch on to being transgender as such a strong identity to their life that like they don't know how to be once you've removed the fact that they're transgender. And I think like this is an important thing to think about, which is like, yes, a part of your identity is transgender, but not your whole identity. You are a whole person, and like what you do besides being transgender is really important. Like, how do you contribute to society? What do you do to move things forward? If like your whole thing is like, I'm transgender and I'm an activist and this is what I need to do, you're an activist. You're not just transgender.
Right.
And I think that's really important because you also get a lot of social media that just like celebrates just being transgender, and like that's great, but I think we can do more. I think we can elevate the game here and be like, for example, when I went to Amsterdam to speak at this conference, I was not speaking about being transgender. I was just speaking about like our perception of the world. And like I used my story of being transgender as a leverage point to talk about a larger topic. And I think that's more of what we need to be pushing towards is like, yeah, I'm trans, but now let's get on and like move on with like something that's beyond just talking about being trans.
And Samantha made a very excellent point along the same lines, and hers was that, you know, she's a woman, and the fact that of trans experience is the incidental part. And that's true for me. When I introduce myself, I'm like, you know, if I have to, I'm like, I'm a woman. I always get saddled with the label, oh, you're a trans woman. I'm like, okay, I'm a woman of trans experience. My gender, you know, there's a broad spectrum of gender, but trans woman is not actually one of the genders. You know, you have woman, you have man, and then you have everything in between. Trans just means that I had to work a little harder than some people.
You're playing life on hard mode.
Yeah, I'd like to reset and start over, please.
Make it easier.
All right, we're coming towards the end of our hour. It flies by. So, what would you say as a piece of advice for our baby trans? You know, those folks that are just discovering their identity. Maybe not new. Maybe not even a surprise. Maybe they've known their entire life. But what would you say to them if they're first stumbling out onto the road that is the trans experience?
I'd say be really mindful of how you form your identity and how you attach yourself to things to create your identity. And I say that because the most dangerous thing that we can do as a community is to just latch onto one identity and say, that's me. When you go through the identity formation process as you're growing up, you look towards things to see like what resonates with you. And oftentimes that can be looking to your parents because they're the closest thing that you can relate to. But this is like something that is more nuanced, and I think kind of takes away everyone's uniqueness when they just buy into the prepackaged personas that are created online or that are accessible. So,
right.
Like, make sure that if you're putting on cat ears, which I like to put on every now and then, if you're putting on cat ears, like, that's something to be mindful of. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean it's you. It's something that you see other people do, but that doesn't make it yours. Make it yours in a way that feels authentic to you. Like, for me,
right.
I openly say that I'm a trans meme at times because I like my cat ears. I like being a cat girl, but that's not my whole thing. That's not all of me. And I easily, when I started out, fell into certain things. And that was easier for me to get started. But as someone who's also multiracial and couldn't relate to either of my parents because they didn't look at all like me, I went through a whole development process of questioning, am I Asian? Am I British? Oh, like, I'm more Asian. Oh, I'm more British. Oh, actually, I'm neither. And I'm just me. I think that's the process that I think we go through as an identity. And so that's what I want our, like, younglings, the young trans folk to realize.
Baby trans.
Yeah, the baby trans. Like, if you're trans, that's great. Don't just, like, buy into everything that you see that comes packaged. Like, do a check. Like, does this feel right for me? And check in on that.
And if it does fit, if you do fit into that nice, neat little box, then good for you. You know,
Yeah,
if that's what fits, then go there. Don't be afraid to stay within the lines or cross over the lines. And also, don't be afraid to change your mind.
Yeah, and like, I think it's really about, like, find the lines, understand where they are, and then draw your own lines. Everyone is special, and embrace that. Embrace your curiosity in yourself, and embrace, like, your own uniqueness. Everyone is unique. To say that you are not would be, like, an oversimplification.
Oh, absolutely. There's the idea that there's actually some kind of box that we're trying to fit people into is just absolutely ridiculous because, you know, every single person is a different shape and every box is perfectly suited for that person. So if they're trying to cram themselves into any other box other than the one that is custom fitted for them, it's going to be some kind of disaster. And, you know. All right. I don't know where I went with that. Okay,
thank you, Jerica.
We have crossover look. We are out of time, so would you like to say any parting words this evening?
Oh gosh, I'd say, like, be mindful. Everyone, just, like, when when you're doing your day-to-day actions, just like be mindful of what you're doing, because you're just doing them automatically. And a lot of these things are just, you just build into them and then you build from them. But some of these things actually prevent you from growing. They prevent you from seeing the things that you may need to see. The way you like check your phone anxiously for the chime or just for some stimulation just on impulse, like that is keeping you regulated within like some kind of system. Like to be thinking and mindful of all these little behaviors that you do. Keep feeling out this box and keep looking for ways. Be mindful because some people don't agree. Yeah, just be mindful. That's
okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us on Transfigure Nation. My name is Alexis Lorraine. This has been Ash joining me tonight, and it has been an adventure. This conversation has gone where no other conversation has gone before. And I'm grateful because, you know, it's good to have just new and different perspectives because it challenges our understanding of ourselves. So,
thank you, Alexis. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to partake in your series. I am such an admirer of it and what you're doing. I so appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, you're not supposed to compliment me on the show. It's hard for me. Okay.
I retract my compliment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's easier for me to deal with. Okay, so, as Ash said, be mindful. Live in the